Status Theory, Episode 17. For most of Western history, men who wore jewelry were considered to be performing femininity. Rings, chains, bracelets, these were female adornments, and their use by men required specific social justification. Today, a man can spend $50,000 on a single object, wear it openly on his wrist, and be universally read as having excellent taste and substantial means. That object is a watch, and the story of how it escaped the cultural rules that governed other jewelry is one of the more fascinating status trajectories of the last 100 years. The wristwatch did not begin as a luxury item. It began as a battlefield tool. Pocket watches had dominated timekeeping for centuries, but during World War I, soldiers needed synchronized timing for coordinated military operations, and reaching into a pocket while under fire was impractical. The solution was to strap the watch to the wrist. After the war, soldiers returning home brought the wristwatch with them. Because the wristwatch had been forged in combat, in the most unambiguous theater of masculine performance in modern history, it carried a masculine credential that no subsequent wearer needed to explain. The object had been battlefield tested. Its gender coding was established in the most culturally authoritative context imaginable. That coding persisted and created the cultural permission structure that allowed men to wear a wrist ornament without it being read as feminine. This is a crucial historical point. The wristwatch became acceptable male ornamentation because it arrived through a masculine gateway, military utility, that grandfathered it past the cultural restrictions governing other ornaments. For men in most Western cultures during the 20th century, the acceptable range of self-ornamentation was extremely narrow. Wedding rings, cufflinks in formal contexts, tie pins at their height of fashion, the occasional signet ring, and the wristwatch. That is almost the entire list. This created an interesting cultural compression. All of the status signaling work that jewelry performs for women, communicating wealth, taste, aesthetic sensibility, social position, cultural access, had to be concentrated into the one or two objects men were permitted to wear. The wristwatch absorbed an enormous amount of that signaling pressure. Because it was one of the only acceptable male ornaments, it became the primary vehicle for male aesthetic and status expression on the body. A woman might communicate her taste, wealth, and social position through earrings, necklaces, bracelets, rings, and a handbag, distributed across multiple objects. A man had the watch, and so the watch had to carry everything. Here is the technical reality of the modern mechanical watch. It is functionally obsolete. Your smartphone tells time more accurately. The digital display on a microwave does too. Even an inexpensive quartz watch, a $20 battery-powered movement, keeps better time than most mechanical movements costing $20,000 or more. The mechanical watch enthusiast community is entirely aware of this, and yet the global luxury watch market was valued at approximately $50 billion in 2022, according to estimates from the Federation of the Swiss Watch Industry, with mechanical movements commanding the price premium. This is the mechanical irrelevance paradox.
The less functionally necessary the object becomes, the more it relies on non-functional justifications, and non-functional justifications are exactly the conditions where status signaling thrives. The expensive mechanical watch is communicating something that has nothing to do with timekeeping, craftsmanship, heritage, patience, discernment, restraint, and the financial capacity to spend $50,000 on something your phone does better. Each of those signals is legible. And legible status signals are worth more than functional accuracy to people in the business of social navigation. Within the world of expensive watches, there is a hierarchy that mirrors the broader status signal hierarchy we examined in our episode on designer bags. At the most visible tier, watches with recognizable dials and names that communicate broadly. A Rolex Submariner or GMT Master has an immediately recognizable silhouette and a name that the non-watch literate can still identify as prestigious. Above that, watches with less visual notoriety but higher cultural status among enthusiasts. Patek Philippe, A. Lange & Söhne, F.P. Journet. These names are essentially unknown to the general public, but within the watch community, they represent the apex of the craft. A Patek Philippe perpetual calendar retails for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The brand's most storied watches have sold at auction for tens of millions. Patek's marketing has long leaned on a multi-generational message. You never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation. That is a precise articulation of old money logic applied to an object. You are not a consumer, you are a custodian. The watch is not a purchase, it is a legacy. And the price of entry is calibrated to communicate that only certain people qualify to be custodians of it. The wristwatch solved a cultural problem. In a social world where men had almost no acceptable vehicle for aesthetic self-expression and status signaling on the body, the watch, grandfathered in through military utility, absorbed all of that pressure. It became male jewelry by default. Then it became a billion-dollar industry by design. The functional purpose, knowing what time it is, became almost incidental. The real product is the signal, about wealth, taste, patience, heritage, and the kind of discernment that knows the difference between a Submariner and a Calatrava. The hands keep moving. The status message does not change. Subscribe to Status Theory for weekly decodes of what expensive objects are really communicating and why the function almost never explains the price.